to this live broadcast. This is a special sitting of the Senate. This broadcast is brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in partnership with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. My name is Kamche Menza. This Wednesday afternoon of April 28th of 2021, the Senate members will be debating the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020. This morning, the Senate had convened to discuss the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020. But the special sitting was adjourned by the Speaker of the Senate, Kenneth Lusaka, following proposals by members of the Senate that the sitting be adjourned to give time for the Senate members to go through a joint report of the National Assembly Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs and the Senate Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights on the Constitution of Kenya. That enabled the Speaker of the Senate to adjourn that particular sitting that was to be recapped this afternoon. So the objective of the bill is to amend the Constitution of Kenya to address issues arising from its implementation, specifically the need to resolve issues of divisive elections and promote gender equity in governance, strengthen the structure of devolution and increase resource allocation to the counties, broaden mechanisms for all the people of Kenya, benefit from economic growth, harmonize certain roles and functions of the bicameral legislature, fortify national ethos by specifying the responsibilities of citizens, and strengthen accountability on public resources and the fight against corruption. In embarking on this constitutional amendment process, the people of Kenya reaffirm their conviction in the words of the preamble to the Constitution, asserting the supremacy of the Almighty God in shaping the destiny of the nation. The proposed constitutional reforms originate from the views of citizens expressed through the Building Bridges Initiative, that is the BBI. Through the BBI, citizens from all corners of the country shared their concerns and views on issues ranging from their responsibilities and rights, national ethos and responsible citizenship, corruption, productivity and shared prosperity, devolution, divisive elections, ethnic antagonism, inclusivity and security, among others. This bill focuses on these issues with an overriding objective of promoting a cohesive society and to further the ideals of a united, prosperous, and just nation. The bill seeks to amend Chapter 2 of the Constitution on formative aspects of the Republic to address a regional integration, cohesion, shared prosperity, and the centrality of the economy. The aspiration is to enhance Kenya's standing and leadership in the region and to balance production and sharing. Clause 2 of the bill proposes to insert a new article, 10A, regional integration and cohesion, into the Constitution to recognize integration and cohesion of the Eastern African region, and Africa as integral towards achieving national economic goals. The provision obligates the state to take policy and legislative measures for the attainment of this ideal. Clause 3 of the bill proposes to insert a new Article 11A. Economy and shared prosperity. Well, the Speaker of the Senate, Kenneth Lusaka, has just entered the chambers. I leave you for this live broadcast, which is brought to you in partnership with Kenya Broadcasting Corporation and the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit. My name is Kamcha Menza. Good afternoon.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor and blessings us, your servants, whom you have been pleased to call to leadership positions in this republic. We seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen. Okay, honorable senators, welcome back. I'm sure we have had time to to go through the Senator Cheriot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for listening to us earlier in the day. But I want to bring to your attention something that has just happened, which perhaps will require your direction and guidance. I received a distress call from one of our colleagues, Senator Mithika Linturi. If you do recall in the morning, he raised a point of order on his reading and understanding of Article 257, and you did promise that we first dispense with the earlier matter, which was whether to adjourn or not, then we will respond to it. This afternoon, on his way to Parliament, he was stopped by a gentleman who claimed to be police officers from the DCI. They asked him to alight from his car, and he's now in a car headed to, he says he's headed to DCI headquarters, and he doesn't understand what his crime is. You will recall, Mr. Speaker, that 3 months ago, we had the IG seated where Senator Malala is seated, and the DCI seated where our colleague Senator Pereno are seated. We were discussing the unfortunate events of what had happened during the revenue formula debacle. And they made a commitment before this House that anytime senators are considering such monumental issues, if there was an issue that warranted them being arrested, it will be first with consultations of a speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I'd wish to know from you whether you are aware why Senator Mithika Linturi has been arrested, and if you're not aware, how do we proceed knowing that we are about to enter that silly season again, like we did during the revenue sharing formula, where colleagues used to be picked one by one. We had to drive to places like Kiserian and Kitengela to look for some of our colleagues and protect them. So, Mr. Speaker, we need your guidance so that we know how to behave in the next few days if this is what we are going to be through as we discuss this very important matter. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, please guide the House on how do we handle such matters.
Senator Khaniri.
Mr. Speaker, the issue being raised by the Senator for Kericho, my good brother Senator Cheriot, is extremely important. It should be noted, Mr. Speaker, that an attack on one of us, it is an attack on all of us. And Mr. Speaker, if we let this go on unabated, then today it's Linturi, tomorrow it's James Orengo, the day after is Pogisho or Khaniri. Mr. Speaker, we must stand and speak with one voice as a Senate, that if indeed our colleague has been apprehended, arrested in line of duty, just for performing his constitutional duty, then as a Senate we must protest. Some of us will not participate in the debate this afternoon until it is explained to us what is happening to our colleague. So, Mr. Speaker, you are the leader of this House, and we are urging you, Mr. Speaker, to take this matter seriously. And for me, as a person, I'm declaring that if that is not explained, then I will boycott. I will not participate in the sessions that we are going to have this afternoon and even tomorrow.
Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr.
Mr. Speaker, this matter is so serious. And, Mr. Speaker, if Senator Linturi has been arrested in the course of duty, we should all leave this chamber. It's not fair. And Mr. Speaker, I participated in the commission or the inquiry onto the arrest of Senator Malala, Senator of Bomet, Nangat, and Lutumbesi. Mr. Speaker, since that time to now, nothing came out of those arrests. It was just pure harassment. At that time, Mr. Speaker, in fact, at that particular moment, the resolution that was made by then the chair, together with the gentlemen from the National Police Service, including the DCI and the IG, was that there will be what is called a liaison committee between the office of the Speaker, of the Speakers, both houses, and the police, so that if there is something that they need from a member of parliament, including Senate, they would first of all make the necessary inquiries before arresting a person in the middle of proceedings. It's just totally unacceptable. It's wrong. And it doesn't matter what he believes in, because this chamber is supposed to be a chamber of debate. This is not a choir where we are supposed to agree or sing the same song. People are supposed to debate and vote. And it will be misconstrued, Mr. Speaker. Even if there was something that they were looking for, it will be misconstrued that they have arrested him so that they either reduce the number of people here or they intimidate the people who have an alternative view. It is very unfortunate that they will do that. So we hope, Mr. Speaker, and in the case of your predecessor, let me say that and repeat it, I've repeated it again. The police came to Parliament Road during our debate on Election Laws Amendment Bill. We were barricaded here. We got off the car somewhere around Uhuru Highway. Your predecessor adjourned this house, Mr. Speaker, until they moved out of Parliament Road. So there must be an explanation. Otherwise, I said the last time, next time it will be somebody else. And there will never be an end to this. Thank you, Speaker.
Senator Kimani Wamatangi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise, Mr. Speaker, to also convey my concern. And Mr. Speaker, I want to agree that indeed the independence of every one of us when we are participating in our duty is paramount. It is not compromisable. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, that people in this House as members must be able to debate, express themselves, Mr. Speaker, say what they think is their opinion, Mr. Speaker, without any interference, Mr. Speaker, and without fear. Mr. Speaker, that must be how we debate and how members feel, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have heard the senator for Kericho, Mr. Speaker, and because Senator Linturi was with us here in the morning, he made the contributions he made, Mr. Speaker. Then we have just been informed by Senator Cheruiyot that he has been arrested. But Mr. Speaker, my plea to the House would be this, because we are here, Mr. Speaker, and Senator Linturi must be within the boundaries of this country or this city. Can we find out, Mr. Speaker, now where Mr. Speaker, Senator Linturi is, Mr. Speaker, without first imputing that he has been arrested for participating in this House. And then, Mr. Speaker, once that is ascertained, Mr. Speaker, then you can proceed to take the necessary action that would be taken by you as the leader of this House, Mr. Speaker. But I believe that in the best interest of not only parity but fairness, both to Senator Linturi and to the integrity of the House, that before we conclude that that is why Senator Linturi has been arrested, Mr. Speaker, we have the means to be able to find out, Mr. Speaker, as to why and where are the whereabouts of Senator Linturi, and within a few minutes report to this House, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I was just seeking your indulgence so that, Mr. Speaker, we can put the truth to the table. Mr. Speaker, it is possible to do that within no time, in a short while, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not gagging anybody. I've not even said anything. Honestly. I was just, no, don't suspect. I was just saying, as we continue contributing, I was just saying in the next 20 minutes, if Senator Linturi is not here, we're going to make a decision. Senator Wambua.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I think I want to be very, very clear on this matter. Mr. Speaker, this is just an attempt to intimidate not just Senator Linturi, but all the senators and all the legislators. Mr. Speaker, I took time to look at this document. One of the very controversial issues in this document, Mr. Speaker, which has been cited by the committee, is an attempt to transfer the powers and functions of the Police Service Commission to the Office of the Inspector General of Police. Mr. Speaker, if the IG is behaving the way he's behaving now, before these powers are transferred to him, how will he behave when the powers are transferred to him? Mr. Speaker, you know some people have already implemented this BBI bill. Mr. Speaker, my submission is that you require the IG in person to produce Senator Linturi here. Whether Senator Linturi was arrested in connection with this or not, the timing is suspect. I thank the Speaker.
What's your point of order, Senator Mamatangi?
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, as members ventilate, Mr. Speaker, and as I've just said, it is possible for us to find out where is Senator Linturi. Mr. Speaker, I am informed, and I need to inform the House, because I said we would call and find out that Senator Linturi had a mishap with some police officers who apprehended him, but Mr.
Order.
Mr. Speaker.
Order, senators.
Mr. Speaker, but Senator Linturi has been released. And he is on the way to this House in the next 10 minutes, Mr. Speaker. He was released and he's on the way to this House, Mr. Speaker.
Order, senators.
And Mr. Speaker, this matter was brought and we have agreed, and as I've said, Mr. Speaker, that indeed it is very wrong. It is absolutely wrong for any member of this House to conduct business in this House, Mr. Speaker, in fear. That's what we have said, Mr. Speaker. It is completely unacceptable that a member of this House should be looking behind his back when doing the things that he is doing. Mr. Speaker, I'm on a point of order.
Okay, what's your point of order, Senator Cheriot? But it's on a point of order.
I'm on a point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Let him.
Mr. Speaker,
okay, let him conclude.
I'm on a I'm on a point of order.
Senator Cheriot.
Let me finish, Mr. Speaker, and then any member is free, because, Mr. Speaker, I volunteered to go and find out. And what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, is as far as we are concerned, and as a senator in this House, Mr. Speaker, I am saying firmly that it is completely wrong for any member of this House to conduct his business looking behind his back in fear, Mr. Speaker. That is absolutely what we are saying, Mr. Speaker. And no one should imagine that for any one reason, Mr. Speaker, that we would condone that kind of thing. And I want to say to my colleagues.
He's on a point of order, Senator.
And I want to say to my colleagues, Mr. Speaker, that family, so that we do not unnecessarily raise temperatures. Senator Linturi has now been released and he's on his way here, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that is the point.
Order. Senator Orengo. Okay. Okay, what's your point of order? What's your point of order before Senator Orengo?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I have spoken, as the government apologist continued talking, I have spoken with Senator Linturi and he's still under arrest. He's still in custody.
Senator Orengo.
Mr. Speaker, this matter, Mr. Speaker, this matter...
Order, senators.
This matter is not as simple as the majority whip is making it. It's not. And Mr. Speaker, this issue has everything to do with the liberties of Parliament. Indeed, there used to be a practice which is observed in the Commonwealth, that when a member of Parliament is on the way to Parliament, or a Parliament is in session, which is required to attend, the member of Parliament should not be arrested without the leave of the Speaker. Because then the Speaker would understand that the arrest has nothing to do with the proceedings before the House. Mr. Speaker, I'm saying this because I've been a victim. I've been a victim. And if these rules were not complied with, many members would have been arrested from even the belly of the chamber. If we let it continue, one of these days, policemen are going to come into the chamber, not just to arrest Linturi, to arrest the Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, you are the head of this House. I cannot take the powers of communicating with another arm of government on behalf of parliamentarians. No. In fact, unfortunately, Mr. Wamatangi cannot speak for the executive. He can only speak for this House. So I suggest that until you have a proper answer, we have or Linturi himself is here. So I move that the House adjourns to give you time to deal with this matter.
Okay, order, senators, order, senators. I want to say this. Order. That this is very, very serious. And because of the gravity of the matter and what has been requested, I am suspending the House for 30 minutes, during which time I will use to find out what exactly has happened. And even after that, after we find out, I'll want to direct the community on national security to get into this matter and find out as a deterrent so that this does not happen again to any member of this. It is so directed.
He doesn't consider the parliament as an institution. If you see the appearance of the CS before the committee, he just sent the CAS to appear before the committee. Chair, so I mean the Speaker, we need your intervention on that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yet another intervention on the same. Honorable Nyikal. I think Chair, thank you. I also want to support that. But I'm not a lawyer, but what I find most interesting is that there's an institution which has to give somebody the authority to petition the House. I think that is what I find most disturbing, and on that basis I support and I think I'm advised by TJ Kajwang that it may be unconstitutional. Thank you, Chair.
Well, I'll issue a comprehensive response to that and the guidance. But I think appreciating what the Honorable TJ Kajwang did say, remember it's still within the authority of the House to make and unmake laws. In fact, I think it sounds a bit tedious that a member of a House of Parliament can even go to court to seek that a law be nullified when you can do it here yourself. With that as may, you know that you put those provisions in the Act in 2015 when the law was done, 2015 culminating around 2016. So I think it's to just request the Honorable TJ, because I may not be available most of the time, please if you could move with speed so that that section 34 does not then appear to frustrate Article 119, the rights given to Kenyans in 119 of the Constitution. Although, of course, 119 is also couched in terms that say to petition Parliament to do anything within its power. So, including to enact and to repeal laws. So I think maybe the Honorable, I'll request the Honorable TJ Kajwang and the Deputy Speaker, I think, to move with speed to bring that amendment so that at least, you know, I am aware of several of those kind of petitions that are before the House and before the committee. We don't want to appear like the committee is not working yet. The committee is kind of hamstrung by the provisions of a law that this House passed. So, but there will be communication to that in that regard. Honourable members, before we proceed to the business on on the order paper, allow me to read this message from His Excellency the President. Standing order number 42, subsection 1, relating to messages from the President, provides that, and I quote, the Speaker shall read to the House any message from the President delivered to the Speaker for communication to the House, close the quotes. In this regard, therefore, I wish to inform the House that I have today, 28th of April 2021, in brackets on our members, which happens to be my birthday, close the quotes. Received a message from His Excellency the President conveying the nomination of the Honorable Lady Justice Martha Karambu Koome for appointment as the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya and President of the Supreme Court. The message also includes the certificate of presidential nomination, the judges' curriculum vitae, testimonials, and recommendation of the Judicial Service Commission on the recruitment and selection process for the Chief Justice. This was submitted in line with the provisions of Article 166, Clause 1 of the Constitution, which provides, and I quote, the President shall appoint the Chief Justice and the Deputy Chief Justice in accordance with the recommendations of the Judicial Service Commission and subject to the approval of the National Assembly, close the quotes. The President therefore seeks the approval of the National Assembly on the said nomination. Honourable members, Section 5 of the Public Appointments in brackets Parliamentary Approval Act 2011 provides that an appointing authority shall, upon nominating a person for appointment to which this act applies, notify the relevant House of Parliament accordingly. Consequently, a proper notification in line with the above provision has been received. Honourable members, Section 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011 further provides that the relevant committee should table its report for debate and decision within 28 days from when the notification of nomination is given. Honourable members, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 42, subsection 3, paragraph C, I now refer the message, including the curriculum vitae of the nominee, to the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs to undertake the necessary approval hearings. I wish to guide the committee as follows on the House. 1, the committee should notify the nominee and the general public of the time and place for holding the approval hearings expeditiously. The notification should therefore be made immediately. And 2, the committee should thereafter commence the necessary approval hearings and table its report on or before Tuesday, 25th of May, 2021 for debate and decision by the House. Finally, although the committee and the House have 28 days to consider and make a decision on the nomination, in view of the compelling public interest and the unique place of the office of the Chief Justice within our constitutional and legal order, the committee is requested to consider the nomination on a priority basis. I thank you, honourable members.
Order number 8, special motion, consideration of a nominee for appointment as Principal Secretary in the State Department for implementation of curriculum reforms.
The Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Education and Research. The Honourable Mukali Mutua. Florence Mutua, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move the following motion: that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Education and Research on the vetting of Professor Fatuma N. Chege, PhD, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 28 April 2021. Honorable Speaker, the Departmental Committee on Education and Research conducted an approval hearing for Professor Fatuma N. Chege, nominee for appointment to the position of Principal Secretary.
Sorry, Honorable Florence Mutua.
Yes.
The motion. The motion.
I have said.
Maybe do you have the order paper?
Yes.
So that, we want the House being a house of record.
Where's the order paper? Miss, I didn't know order paper. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the consideration of a nominee for appointment as Principal Secretary in the State Department for implementation of curriculum reforms. Mr. Speaker,
maybe Honorable Florence Mutua.
Yes.
The format is as follows: that I beg to move that, taking into consideration the findings of that blah blah blah.
Huh?
Then it will follow.
Mr. Speaker, I've done that.
Not yet.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the following motion: that, taking into consideration the findings of the Departmental Committee on Education and Research in its report on the vetting of a nominee for appointment as Principal Secretary in the State Department for implementation of curriculum reforms, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, April 28, 2021, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 1553B of the Constitution and the Sections 3(8) of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, that this House approves the appointment of Professor Fatuma N. Chege, PhD, as Principal Secretary, State Department for implementation of curriculum reforms. Mr. Speaker, the Departmental Committee on Education and Research conducted an approval hearing of one Professor Fatuma Chege, nominee for appointment to the position of Principal Secretary, State Department for the implementation of curriculum reforms in the Ministry of Education on 1st April 2021. Mr. Speaker, I want to confirm to the House that the Clerk of the National Assembly followed the procedures, which I think I will skip, to ensure that the right procedures were followed. The Clerk invited the public to submit memoranda by way of written statements on oath affidavits on the suitability of the nominee. Mr. Speaker, I can confirm to the House that by the close of the deadline, the committee had not received any submissions in support or in contention on the suitability of the nominee for appointment as the Principal Secretary for curriculum reforms. Further, Mr. Speaker, in fulfillment of the provisions of Article 1181B of the Constitution, Section 6(4) of the Act and Standing Order 45(3), I can confirm, Mr. Speaker, the procedure was fully met. Honorable Speaker, the nominee finally appeared before the committee on Thursday, 1st April 2021, for the approval hearing in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. And quickly, Mr. Speaker, the committee made the following observations. First, the committee considered the nominees' duly filled questionnaire in accordance with Section 6(8) of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act, curriculum vitae, reports from relevant authorities, oral submissions during the approval hearing, and made the following observations. That one, Mr. Speaker, the nominee had a wide and very rich academic background with a certificate in teacher training, diploma in education, Bachelor of Education, Master of Arts, Education, and PhD in Education with specialization in gender and education. Mr. Speaker, we found that the nominee had relevant experience and management skills, having served in the public service for the last 48 years, and currently she's the Deputy Vice Chancellor at Kenyatta University Administration. Mr. Speaker, we also found out that she has 30 years teaching philosophy and sociology of education and qualitative research methods in the university. She is trained and a certified teacher with 5 years teaching experience at all levels of basic education in Kenya and 2 years tutoring in teaching training colleges. Mr. Speaker and the House, the nominee served as an elected chairperson of the Department of Education Foundation for 4 years and was an elected dean, School of Education for 6 years, chairperson of the Kenya Education Management Institute, chairperson of the Kenya School of Law, and she was a member of several boards. The nominee served as the chairperson of the Presidential Task Force on implementation of curriculum reforms. Mr. Speaker, the nominee demonstrated adequate leadership and extensive research skills gained during her long academic period. Mr. Speaker, the procedure that has been followed to arrive at the nominee is provided for under Article 155, 3A and read with Section 47.3 of the Public Service Commission Act number 10 of 27 was adhered to by the selection panel. And that out of the 3 nominees presented to His Excellency the President by the Public Service Commission, the President nominated Professor Fatuma Chege for approval by the National Assembly, and subsequent appointment as Principal Secretary, State Department for Curriculum Reforms, pursuant to Article 1553. Mr. Speaker, we went through the oral submissions and also found that the nominee, the evidence submitted by the nominee during the approval hearing, that she met all the constitutional and statutory requirements necessary for appointment as Principal Secretary as provided for under Article 155A of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, today Kenya is developing a new curriculum for the new era. The national policy on curriculum reforms is guided by the vision of nurturing every learner's potential and is championed at the highest level, highest political levels by the Kenyan head of state, His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta, and the Cabinet Secretary, C.S. Magoha. In line with Kenya Vision 2030, Mr. Speaker, and the Constitution of Kenya 2010, the overall aim of the new competence-based curriculum is to equip citizens with the skills for the 21st century. CBS focuses on the global shift towards education programs that encourage optimum human capital development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second this motion that Professor Chege be appointed the PS for the newly created Department of Curriculum Reforms and Implementation. Mr. Speaker, as the chair has alluded, the committee found this lady to be capable of running this department owing to the fact that she convinced us the way of handling her questions. She is mature, composed, and able to handle very stressful questions. And her vast experience, also owing to the fact that she even worked at lower levels of education, all the way to the university and currently an administrator there, and also complemented with the fact that she actually chaired the task force that the president appointed to look into the issue of curriculum reforms and implementation. Mr. Speaker, we found that there would be no better person actually to implement the recommendations of that committee. And Mr. Speaker, I would have said more, but reading the mood of the House, it appears like I just have to second Mr. Speaker and request the House to adopt this report and approve the appointment of Professor Chege. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I second.
It's not. Very well. Madam, why don't you finish fetching water? I propose a question. I hope I'm audible now. I propose the question, which is that taking into consideration the findings of the Departmental Committee on Education and Research in its report on the vetting of a nominee for appointment as Principal Secretary in the State Department of Implementation of Curriculum Reforms, laid on the table of the House today, Wednesday, April 28, 2021, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 155, Clause 3, Paragraph B of the Constitution, and Sections 3 and 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, this House approves the appointment of Professor Fatuma N. Chege, PhD, as Principal Secretary, State Department for Implementation of Curriculum Reforms. Well, there is an overwhelming demand for Honorable when a buyer.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Speaker, I would like to,
Now, can we, let's just wait, let's hold on. As the staff are busy trying to rectify the mics. We'll get back to you, Honorable David Ochieng, I believe.
Yes.
Yes, proceed on.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to support the report and support the appointment of Professor Fatuma Chege as Principal Secretary in Education reforms, curriculum reforms. Professor Fatuma Chege, I think, is one of the very well knowledgeable educationists in this country. I know Professor Fatuma Chege because she was my professor at the university, both at master's level and at undergrad. And I know she's a good practitioner. She's not only an administrator and a curriculum developer, but she's a practitioner in education, having taught from the lowest level to the highest level. Her work can speak for itself. And I think for the first time, I have seen that the president is recognizing my alma mater, Kenyatta University, as the home of education in this country. We have now Dr. Ruto, who is now a CAS there, and Professor Fatuma Chege, who is also an alumnus, and also a professor at Kenyatta University, where a lot of education principles and practices have been developed. I think this country now has the right people to drive education curriculum reform for the betterment of this country, and also driving this country towards industrialization and using education for development. So, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate the committee for accepting this gallant lady into the Ministry of Education so that she can bring in her expertise and her education to help this country move forward in the education sector. Thank you very much, and I congratulate the Professor. Thank you.
Honorable David Ochieng.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Listening to the chair of the committee give a report, and this being out of record, I was looking forward to seeing this lady's CV and her credentials. But what we have on the portal, Mr. Speaker, are for some other people. If you check through your portal now, the documents uploaded with regard to this nomination are of other persons, not of Professor Fatuma Chege. Mr. Speaker, it's not just us following these proceedings. These are nationwide processes. And so if you go to that portal, the persons whose names or whose documents have been given to us as Fatuma Chege, I mean, this House of Record, Honorable Junet, you should go to school a bit. This House of Record, that what we are discussing is Professor Fatuma Chege, not these other people whose names appear now in the record. Mr. Speaker, the names that appear now are those of Dr. Jamlet Muturi and Timon Alfred. So could these records be made proper so that, because the only way of us interfacing with this document is this process, not hard copies anymore. And so if the records are showing other people, not Fatuma Chege, then we are not debating the right report. Mr. Speaker, thank you, and I thank you so much.
Maybe the Honorable Chair, what would be your reaction to what the Honorable David Ochieng has raised? Honorable Florence Mutua.
Mr. Speaker, I sincerely don't know what Mheshimiwa Ochieng is talking about, because we have the right CV, we do have the right documentation, and indeed we are discussing the right Professor Fatuma Chege. Maybe the system was uploaded the wrong report, Mr. Speaker, but we will ensure that the right report is uploaded.
No, who are you informing? Now, Honorable Dr. Diambo, you know you are the one who seconded the motion now. You want to provide information to Honorable Ochieng? About what has been uploaded. What is? Very well.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. The information that I wanted just to pass to support what my chair is saying, we had 2 reports. So the names he's reading is for the second report. So I believe he must have just opened a different CV. There are 2 different reports that we are presenting today. There is this appointment of the PS and then the TSC commissioner. So I think he has opened the wrong report, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Cheng.
Mr. Speaker, what I have on my desk reads the following. The report of the vetting of Professor Fatuma N. Chege, PhD, for appointment to the position of Principal Secretary, State Department for Implementation of Curriculum Reforms. Mr. Speaker, if you go ahead on page, Mr. Speaker, on page, let's for example go to page 55. Page 55, page 54. Mr. Speaker, the documents annexed, all of them relate to other persons other than Fatuma Chege, as uploaded here.
Who are those ones?
They relate to the TSC commissioners, Mr. Speaker. That's what is on the record here. So the issue, Mr. Speaker, is not for...
Can you perhaps go to, maybe where they're dealing with the one of TSC commissioners, maybe that's where the one of the lady may be.
Mr. Speaker, but we're also on record, Mr. Speaker. We cannot allow this to stand as a house.
So, no, it will be corrected. It will be corrected, not about Ching. It will be corrected. If there is that mix-up, it will be corrected.
I can't see the documents, Mr. Speaker.
Because
I can't see them.
obviously, that cannot be the work of the chair. That is the work of the staff.
It's not the chair, Mr. Speaker, it's the staff.
Yes, it must be. It will be corrected. The clerk takes to correct. Honorable Dr. Tuitoek, Cameroon.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I also rise to support the candidacy of Professor Fatuma. Her background was very strong, Honorable Speaker. She rose from humble backgrounds, and she really went through education up to the highest academic levels, and also practiced education from as a teacher, as well as rising through the university, teaching the university. And we found her to be quite ready to carry the issues of implementation of reforms. Especially, she has been the chair of the task force on the CBC. So we actually support a candidature. Therefore, I request that the House approves her appointment. Thank you. I beg to support.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, whereas I don't have a problem with Professor Fatuma Chege, first, I don't know her well, but I've heard from those who have interacted with her and the committee that she's qualified for the job. But, Mr. Speaker, the concern I have, which I thought this committee would help the House deal with, is the tendency of the executive, and more particularly I want to say the president, in creating too many departments in ministries. Mr. Speaker, we cannot always complain as a nation that we have a bloated wage bill, that the wage bill keeps on increasing, and as a House, we keep on approving more appointments and more creation of positions without even raising a finger. Mr. Speaker, what is our role as oversight institution in this country if we have agreed that the government is heavy, then we cannot continue allowing creation of more positions in government. And so, Mr. Speaker, this lady does not need a new job. She already has a job. We can only create more positions if we need them. But if those positions are not needed, then why do we create them? This ministry, particularly Ministry of Education, has so many PSs already. Why are we creating additional permanent secretary? So, Mr. Speaker, we are going to have 5 PSs are here. And I want to say on behalf of the people of Suba South, who are taxpayers in this country, that we do not need another PS. What the executive needs is to realign these functions, to other existing departments so that we retain the number of PSS we have. And Mr. Speaker, I am saying this convicted that this is the only way that at least we will say there is a stop to the way we have been doing things. Because it is hypocritical for us. It is hypocritical to go to the media, go to TV talk shows, lamenting and complaining that we have a bloated executive, that we are spending so much on salaries, and we come back in this house, receive nominees from the president, creating more positions, and we ceremoniously, and like conveyor belt, just pass the names. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm not just opposing the appointment of this lady, but I'm opposing the creation of a new principal secretary in the Ministry of Education. It is unnecessary, it is wastage of public resources, and so I oppose this motion, Mr. Speaker.
There's a point of order from the member for Kilifi North.
Mr. Speaker, you see, I like what my leader is saying, but he also contradicts himself because he supports the BBI, which creates even more positions. And therefore, when he stands here and says that, he is saying no to this because of a new position, it creates even more positions, Mr. Speaker.
Are you through with the Honorable? The Honorable Bandi. Give the Honorable Bandi. The Honorable Bandi.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, whereas Honorable Owen Baya is my friend and sits very close to me, but Mr. Speaker, since he deserted ODM and went some other wing, I don't want to mention today, Mr. Speaker is so confused. Well, Mr. Speaker, really, BBI has not been costed, or the positions that are created in BBI. If I ask you today to present a cost, you may not. So those are allegations. Mr. Speaker, I think what we are discussing is a substantive issue as to whether we should expand the executive or not, Mr. Speaker.
Minority Whip.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also stand to oppose this motion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with what my chairman has said and my leader. Mr. Speaker, curriculum is a very important thing, I know. And I know that we are moving from 844 to another system, 63, I don't know what. But Mr. Speaker, that is just one item in the Ministry of Education, Mr. Speaker. Now, if you are going to appoint a PS for one item, Mr. Speaker, when you want to do school feeding program also, you'll appoint a PS. When you want to do something, Mr. Speaker, this is not the best way to manage the public service, Mr. Speaker. I think this is just creating a job for someone, Mr. Speaker. And this must stop, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, how many PSs are in the Ministry of Education so far? There are around five of them. 5 PSs, Mr. Speaker. There is one I know that his title is Development of Post-Skills something, Mr. Speaker. It's called Chariot. That man is doing nothing in that ministry, Mr. Speaker. Why can't you give this job to that guy, Mr. Speaker? He can do it. Honestly, he is idle. I have visited him. He has no work to do completely. Why can't you give that job to that guy so that he can do it? Because he's already earning a salary as a PS, Mr. Speaker. Post-skill development, Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I urge this House. I don't want to say I'm supporting her because let us drop this matter, Mr. Speaker. Let us reject something for the first time so that we go on record as Parliament, Mr. Speaker, that there is something this Parliament has rejected, Mr. Speaker. And this is an opportunity, Mr. Speaker. This is the first opportunity, Mr. Speaker. Let us reject this one, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Nyeri Town. Member for Nyeri Town. Hello?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honour members, I can see those were light moments. But let's go back to business.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this appointment, and Mr. Speaker had actually raised a point of order on the comments that were made by Minority Leader Honorable Bandi. Because as a member of the Education Committee, one of the things we actually interrogated was the importance of that particular department. Mr. Speaker, curriculum development, curriculum implementation, which is actually what the Dr. Fatuma is coming into the department that is going to be doing that work. Mr. Speaker, I do not know whether Honorable Bandi, maybe he doesn't have children who are in the lower classes. And I want to make a point that we are currently going through a transition of curriculum, Mr. Speaker. And the transition of curriculum is affecting millions of children. Mr. Speaker, I wish he was arguing for us to remove another state department, not this one. Because this particular department is affecting millions of children. We have children in primary school right now who are undergoing education under two systems. Lower classes who are under CBC, and upper classes who are under 844. That transition is a critical part of our education system that needs to be oversighted very closely. That is what this department is going to be seeing. Mr. Speaker, it would be important then, in my opinion, for Honorable Bandi and Honorable Junet to actually interrogate what role this particular department is going to be doing. Because we cannot reject something for the sake of rejecting it. There has to be context. We cannot make a point of saying we are going to reject this appointment so that we make a point. We have to do it based on context. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm a bit disappointed in Honorable Bandi and Honorable Junet, and I wanted to maybe just inform them that this department is going to be overseeing work that is affecting millions of children who are going through a transition in their curriculum. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, remember the rules of debate. You could even get excited, be disappointed, but just make your point. Don't bother. This reference to one another, honourable members, is not helping in debate. And because I know we are getting into some, I can see a lot of members who have indicated the desire to speak. I don't know whether all of you want to speak to this one or. Yeah, the Honorable Mark Nyamita, member for Uriri.
Speaker, the PS will be working with, the PS is not going to work in this department alone, but the PS is going to be working with the technocrats within the ministry. So all we're asking is that the President should consider reorganizing the Ministry of Education. Mr. Speaker, today if you go to the Ministry of Education, even when we are following up on matters that affect us in our different schools, you will be tossed back and forth because the departments are too many that sometimes they don't even know who is in charge of what. So I just want to say that in as much as we're encouraging the government to continue create employment, but these many appointments that we are having, this current constitution put a limit on the number of cabinet secretaries that were supposed to be there. And the ordinary thing that should have happened. Even if a cabinet secretary was to be given some people to help them in the name of PSS, there can just be maybe 1 or 2 people. But we can't have 6 people under one cabinet secretary. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to urge my colleagues that this appointment is misplaced and we need to reject it in total. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know why people have a problem with Fatuma, because at the same people were talking about inclusivity, and on the month of Ramadan, I presume Fatuma is a Muslim and she is representing a constituency. But Mr. Speaker, the matter, and I really want to bring to attention of the House, that Honorable Junet, and I can't lie, just like me, our children go to Aga Khan. And that's why he doesn't know this new system, but for benefit of doubt, it is 263333, Honorable Junet. But the question is, the whole concept of shifting from 844 to this new system itself is faulty. Because you are taking this system, which is at the same par with the other international standards, to rural schools where there's no electricity, they have no food, they have no classrooms, they have nothing. And no teachers. Some regions like Kapedo and part of Northeastern, teachers are not there. So whether we appoint a PS or not, we must evaluate the whole system. This system can't work. And you know, that's why we are missing the late Professor Apollo, the late Mzee Moi. Even when he brought 844, he brought with the milk. You know, he brought with the milk something to entice. Now you are bringing a system and you're not enticing even the rural folk. The Speaker, you cannot bring the same system or closer to that what is being taught in Aga Khan, in Breban, to a school in rural Kenya. So the whole issue, apart from the issue of, and I really want to thank Honorable Bandi, they might not listen to you on the bloated wage bill, but in a few months' time, they will listen to IMF, and they will listen to the World Bank. So just wait, hold your horses. And I have a feeling even the CS will be sacked because they have to reduce and rationalize. Mr. Speaker, I think the Education Committee, apart from now this vetting, they should bring a report to the House on the success of this system. This system is not taking place. You cannot introduce this kind of a system. It's PE, for example, PE is supposed to be a very key thing in this system. Some schools even don't have field. They don't have classrooms. So I think Parliament and its committee must interrogate. And I really want to agree with also a member who said the current PS of basic education is a guy who created the father of this system. You know? He's an expert. Mr. Speaker, you cannot call a public officer who cannot defend himself notorious. I think that is very unparliamentary. Yeah, a public officer who can defend. So, Mr. Speaker, as I support Fatuma, I hope it is not the individual we are calling about. It is the whole system is not taking place. You know, and I come from a background that we promised Kenyans laptops. When some of us during that time we said, are you sure we'll deliver these laptops? 8 years down the line, there are no laptops because the schools have no electricity. The schools had no classrooms. They had no teachers. So how do you take a laptop, a gadget? So, Mr. Speaker, I support, but I think everybody must interrogate, and all of us, the stakeholders, must interrogate the system.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I think you probably might want to give guidance to myself and
my colleagues. Mr. Speaker, the report that is before us is about the nomination of an individual to a certain position, and not about the creation of that particular position, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as much as I agree with my colleagues and the leadership, Honorable Mbadi and Honorable Junet, but I equally need to remind them that this is a house of procedures, and what is there is not an issue of whether the element of that lady is the one who should be the one who holds that position, or whether that position should be created, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I find it quite disturbing when a few years ago, my brother, elder brother, Honorable Duale, was the one who was clapping and applauding that people will be getting free laptops. He was the one who promised us, whilst we were the ones who were asking whether it is feasible, Mr. Speaker. So I think it's important for you to give us guidance on these matters. Thank you very much.
Honorable Kimunya.
Honorable Speaker.
Leader Majority.
I can see very clearly that perhaps there is some confusion within the House on the report that has been tabled and on the matter that we are discussing. And because of the seriousness of the matter, I would want to, pursuant to Standing Order number 96, which basically allows a member to move that the question being discussed be postponed to another day. I wish honorable members, Honorable Speaker, I want your protection. Honorable Speaker, the issue, some issues have been, there are some questions that are rising on the floor that perhaps the Education Committee needs to bring more information. Where are we on the curriculum? Why do we need an appeal for the curriculum? These matters have not come, and hence we might end up making a decision based on the wrong premise. And it's important that by the time this House makes a decision, we have all this information on the floor. So I would wish, Honorable Speaker, to move that the debate on this motion on the approval of Professor Fatuma Chege be now adjourned, pursuant to Standing Order 96. That's it. Are you a question?
Yeah. You know, very well, honour members. You know, honour members, sometimes it's good always to always consult your standing orders, so that you know what you say. You know, it's just the decision is upon the Speaker to make. If, in the opinion of the Speaker, the motion, the dilateral motion, is not one that is an abuse of the process, the Speaker may allow without question put. So I don't know why many of you want to do my work. So you just have to allow me to do my work, because you know you will do the other one. Well, in my opinion, the motion is proper, and in my view, it's not an abuse of the process of the House, and therefore I grant the request without question put. Debate will resume at another date when the House resumes. Next order. Next order.
Order number 9, special motion, consideration of nominees for appointment as chairperson and member of the Teacher Service Commission.
The chairperson, Honorable Florence Mutua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that, taking into consideration the findings of the Departmental Committee on Education and Research in its report on the vetting of nominees for appointment to the Teacher Service Commission, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, April 28, 2021, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 252B of the Constitution, Section 8.8 of the Teacher Service Commission Act 2012, and Section 3 and 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, this House now approves the appointment of the following persons to the Teacher Service Commission. 1, Dr. Jamlek Muturi John, PhD, Chairperson, and 2, Mr. Timon Alfred Otieno Oyucho as a member. Honorable Speaker, the Departmental Committee on Education and Research conducted approval hearings for the following nominees for appointment to the positions of Chairperson and member of the Teacher Service Commission on 8 April 2021, Dr. Jamlek Muturi John for appointment as Chairperson of the Teacher Service Commission, and Mr. Timon Alfred Oyucho Otieno for appointment as member for the Teacher Service Commission. Mr. Speaker, the nominees followed the due process and the Clerk of the National Assembly also followed the procedure and advertised on the print media on Wednesday 31st, inviting the public to submit memoranda by way of written statements on oath affidavits on the suitability of the nominees in conformity with Section 6.9 of the Act. Mr. Speaker, I can confirm that by the close of submission deadline, the committee had received 2 memoranda contesting the suitability of 1, Timon Alfred Otieno Oyucho, for appointment as a member of the Teacher Service Commission from the following persons. 1, Mr. Eliud Owino of P.O. Box 49300, 00100, telephone number 0722-782806. In his submission, Mr. Eliud Owino averred that Mr. Timon Alfred Otieno Oyucho has no regard to rule of law, thrives on deception, and flourishes in the business of deceit through falsehood and manipulation of weak minds. As the Director of Legal, Labor, and Industrial Relations at the Commission, he is the chief architect of persistent friction between teachers and their employer TSC, through misleading, misadvising the Commission leadership to execute wrong decisions, which consequently has led TSC into gross violation of the Constitutions, TSC Act, Labor Relations Act, ILO treaties, conventions, protocols, and memoranda of understanding, including the UN chapter. The second one, Mr. Speaker, was from Mr. Zabulon Boya of telephone 023-458-772, submitted that the nominee has consistently and persistently misadvised the Commission as the Director of Legal, Labor, and Industrial Relations, leading to the breach of the Constitution of Kenya, the TSC Act 2012. Further, he lacks integrity, empathy, and does not believe in rule of law and transformation of teaching service for quality education. Mr. Speaker, after consideration and deliberation on the memoranda, the committee took note of the petitioner concerns and resolved to make a determination of its own to establish the suitability of the nominee to be appointed as the member of the TSC Commission. The committee observed that both memoranda, Mr. Speaker, did not meet the required threshold as is provided under Section 6(9) of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act because they had not been signed under oath, a commissioner of oaths. Mr. Speaker, all the fulfillments in the due process were followed, and the committee made the following observations. 1. Section 5 of the Teacher Service Act number 2020 of 2012 provides that the commission shall consist of a chairperson and 8 other members appointed in accordance with Article 250 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, currently the Teacher Service Commission has only 2 serving commissioners who were appointed in 2020 after the terms of the previous commissioners expired on various dates between 2019 and 2021. The 2 commissioners are from Central and Nairobi regions. It is apparent that at the moment the Teacher Service Commission is not properly constituted. That the nominees...
Now, honour members, honour members, I think we had large break when you could go and do this kamukunchis. Allow the Honourable Florence to prosecute her matter, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we found that the nominee being considered for approval or otherwise by the committee from Eastern and Nyanza regions for the chairperson and member respectively. Mr. Speaker, this morning, Mr. Speaker, we had a meeting with the Public Service Commission and the TSC, where we requested them that they should advertise for the other regions. The other regions that are remaining are 5, and we have been. It has been confirmed that within the next 14 days, the advertisements for the 5 remaining regions are going to be advertised. Mr. Speaker, that to fill the vacant positions, an advertisement was done by the Teacher Service Commission in March 2020. However, only 2 vacancies were advertised, one for chairperson and the other one for member, as opposed to advertising all the 7. And that is why we had a meeting with the Public Service Commission to confirm why all the 7 commissions, the positions were not advertised. That the procedure used to arrive at the nominees for the position of chairperson and member was adhered to by the selection panel, and that out of the 3 nominees, Mr. Speaker, presented to His Excellency the President by the selection panel, the President nominated 1 Dr. Jamlek Muturi John, PhD, for approval by the National Assembly and subsequent appointment as chairperson, Teacher Service Commission, pursuant to Article 252B and C of the Constitution. That out of the 3 nominees presented to His Excellency the President by the selection panel, the President nominated 1 Mr. Timon Alfred Otieno Oyucho for approval by the National Assembly and subsequent appointment as member, Teacher Service Commission, in line with Article 250B and C. Mr. Speaker, we made the following general recommendations: that the appointing authority in making subsequent appointments towards attaining the full membership of the Teacher Service Commission should adhere to the provisions of Section 8, 16A and B of the Teacher Service Commission Act number 20 of 2012, which provides that in nominating or appointing a person as a member of the Commission He holds a PhD qualification in agricultural entomology from Kenyatta University, 2 master's degrees, namely a master's degree in agricultural entomology from Kenyatta University, and a Master of Business Administration from the United States International University. He has a bachelor's degree in education science from Kenyatta University. In addition, the nominee holds a higher diploma in human resource management from the Institute of Personnel Management in Nairobi. The nominee, Mr. Speaker, has a wide experience of 32 years in educational management and training, has served in various capacities of classroom teacher, high school principal, university lecturer, and county executive committee member in charge of education, science, and technology in Embu County, and is currently working as the CEC in charge of agriculture, livestock, fisheries, and cooperatives in Embu County government. That during the approval, Mr. Speaker, the nominee exhibited knowledge in matters relating to education and management, leadership skills, and human resource management qualities necessary for the position, Mr. Speaker, he's being nominated to. Mr. Speaker, that based on the number of submissions during the approval hearing, the nominee demonstrated abilities and knowledge, understanding, and experience, qualities necessary for the appointment as Chairperson, Teacher Service Commission. Mr. Speaker, I'll go straight to Mr. Timon Alfred Otieno, and these are the observations that we made as a committee, that the nominee has a rich background, rich academic background. He holds a Master of Laws degree and Bachelor of Laws degree, both from the University of Nairobi. In addition, he holds a postgraduate diploma of law from the Kenya School of Law and is a member of the Law Society of Kenya. The nominee also holds a diploma in science education majoring in mathematics and physics. He has undertaken other short courses, workshops, and conference on education, law, and related fields. Mr. Speaker, currently the nominee is pursuing a master's degree in employment and labor relations at the University of Turin in Italy. The nominee has 34 years experience in matters relating to education, training, and law. He served under the Teacher Service Commission for the entire period of his public service in different capacities, rising from the level of assistant teacher to director legal, labor and industrial relations directorate commission. That his service under the commission comprises 13 years of classroom teaching in various secondary schools. And for me to summarize, let me go directly to the recommendations. All the other procedures were followed, Mr. Speaker. The committee recommendations, having conducted the approval hearings for the nominees pursuant to Article 252B of the Constitution, as read with Section 8.8 of the Teacher Service Commission Act, number 2020, number 20 of 2012, Section 3 and 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act, number 33 of 2011, the committee recommends that this House approves the nomination of Dr. Jamlek Muturi John for appointment to the position of Chairperson of the Teacher Service Commission, and approves the nomination of one Timon Alfred Otieno Oyucho for appointment to the position of member of the Teacher Service Commission. Mr. Speaker, it should be noted by the members that we only have 2 commissioners performing duties. We have 2 commissioners in the commission right now, and they cannot perform any duties because they do not have the required quorum. So, Mr. Speaker, I kindly beg the House to support the adoption of this report so that the TSC Commission can be able to have the required quorum to be able to support. Honorable members, it is important for us to know that the current CBA is coming to an end of June, and we need this commission in place so that we can be able to discuss serious matters relating to teachers. Mr. Speaker, it is also upon the honorable members to know that the promotion, placement, and recruitment can only take place if we have the entire commission on board. Mr. Speaker, I therefore beg to move and call upon Honorable Ngunjiri Wambogo to second this motion. Thank you.
Who's seconding? Honorable Wambogo. Eric Dick.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the motion on the appointment of Dr. Jamlek Mutungi John, PhD, and to be Chair TSC, and Mr. Timon Alfred Oyucho Otieno to be a member of the Teacher Service Commission. Mr. Speaker, the only thing I would like to emphasize that has come from the substantive presentation by the Chair is the critical role that TSC plays, and the fact that we have a CBA coming up in a few months, which will require us to have quorum at the Commission, and right now we do not have, as we only have 2 commissioners. Mr. Speaker, I would also want to emphasize the issue of regional diversity, ethnic diversity. Mr. Speaker, when we were interrogating these nominees for the commissioner, we raised the issue with the TSC, and it was also raised this morning with the head of the public service, that there were 7 vacancies and only 2 were advertised. And we have been informed that part of this is because there is a structure of ensuring that the commissioners' terms expire in a staggered way, so that we do not find ourselves in the situation we find ourselves right now, where we do not have quorum at the commission. However, we are assured that currently, if the House supports this report to pass these 2 nominees, we are advised that an advertisement will be coming up within the next 2 weeks to ensure that we also have the remaining 5 positions advertised, and to take cognizant of the fact that of the need for regional diversification. It has been noted that the nominees, the commissioners we have, including these nominees, will be representing Northeastern, Central, Eastern, and Nyanza. That means Rift Valley, Western, Nairobi, and Coast nominees or commissioners are the ones who will be advertised in the coming advertisements, to ensure that TSC has a regional representation and that it is able to ensure that the voices of every part of this country is represented. Mr. Speaker, the other thing we urge the public service is to ensure that we also have youth represented in that particular commission, and we're looking forward to the adverts. As a committee, we want to make a commitment to this House that we will ensure that the next appointments ensure that the commission, once fully constituted, having a chair and 8 commissioners, has a representation and has a regional diversification and gender diversification by the time that as it operates and heads into the next term. I second. Thank you.
Honourable members, I propose a question, which is that taking into consideration the findings of the Departmental Committee on Education and Research in its report on the vetting of nominees for appointment to the Teacher Service Commission, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, April 28, 2021, and pursuant to provisions of Article 250, Clause 2, Paragraph B of the Constitution, Section 8, Subsection 8 of the Teacher Service Commission Act of 2012, and Sections 3 and 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, this House now approves the appointment of the following persons to the Teacher Service Commission. 1, Dr. Jamlek Muturi John, PhD, Chairperson, and 2, Mr. Timon Alfred Otieno Oyucho, Member. Is that the House I put the question? Honourable members, it's the desire of the House that I put the question. I therefore accordingly do so, that taking into consideration the findings of the Departmental Committee on Education and Research in its report on the vetting of nominees for appointment to the Teacher Service Commission, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, April 28, 2021, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 250, Clause 2, Paragraph B of the Constitution, Section 8, Subsection 8 of the Teacher Service Commission Act of 2012, and Sections 3 and 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act of 2011, this House now approves the appointment of the following persons to the Teacher Service Commission. 1, Dr. Jamlek Muturi John, PhD, Chairperson. 2, Mr. Timon Alfred Otieno Oyucho, Member. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as the counter opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Very well.
Order number 10, the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020, second reading.
There? No. Clerk. Just, yeah. Sinimaliza hii. What is happening at the back there? No, honour members, we are now on business appearing on the order paper as number 10, which is the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020. As you can see from the order paper, it is introduced pursuant to the provisions of Article 257 plus 7 of the Constitution. And again, it is indicated that a member nominated by the promoters of the Building Bridges Initiative to move. I have since received a letter signed by the promoters as the head of the Secretariat of the Building Bridges Initiative, indicating that a request that they have
Standing Order 83 to seek your guidance on whether the timelines exposed in Article 256 of the Constitution Amendment by Parliamentary Initiative on the 90 days for calling of the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020 for second reading apply. Honorable Speaker, as you are aware, Article 257 of the Constitution is silent on timelines and stages for consideration of the bill. Indeed, Article 57 of the Constitution only applies Article 256(4) in respect to assent of the bill only, and hence Article 256(1) may not apply. Honorable Speaker, for clarity purposes, in this case, are we in order to proceed to consider the bill for second reading in light of the timelines set out in Article 256(1) of 90 days? Honorable Speaker, still, I seek your guidance on whether a bill to amend the Constitution can be amended.
as seen from the report of the Joint Committee, the National Assembly Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs, and the Senate Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs, and Human Rights, the report of the joint committees raises serious constitutional issues contained in clause 43, 44, 66, 67, and the second schedule to the bill that in view should inform amendments to the bill. Honorable Speaker, these clauses deal with the offices
now, Honorable Sankok.
Yes.
You know, I want to just spare. You're also on a point of order, but now you are debating something which is not even before the House.
No,
until the bill has been moved.
Yes.
All those things you're writing about, clauses, what, they are just for entertaining yourself.
Honorable Speaker, I'm seeking your guidance.
No, just a minute. Honorable members, the Honorable Sankok has the floor. No, Honorable Sankok, you have the floor, but please do not refer to something that has not been removed.
Okay.
However, you are perfectly in order to raise the issues about Article 256. But unfortunately, Honorable Sankok, so that we don't waste time.
Yes.
And no other member waste time on this. The issue you have raised about 90 days is when it is a parliamentary initiative. It is a parliamentary initiative. That is when the 90 days publication period applies. It does not apply to a popular initiative.
Yeah, Your Honorable Speaker, that is why I was seeking your guidance, because I know you are very intelligent, you are well informed, you are a mobile encyclopedia when it comes to the Constitution. Well, shut up, Honorable Buddy. Don't ban. So I really do agree, and I'm well guided. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Sorry, Honourable members, you know, no, Honourable Chris Wamalwa. You know, yes, and you know, even as you raise, all of you want to speak at this point. Yes. Remember, there is nothing has been, is before the House. All that we have done is to read the order paper, the order.
Thank you.
So that you don't address me on what is the contents, the substance.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, Honorable Amalo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm raising a point of order regarding your earlier communication of 4th March regarding the second and the third reading pertaining this BBI report, whereby you had indicated clearly, Mr. Speaker, and this being a House of Records, that it should be moved by the committee chair. And today you've mentioned another letter from the promoters that the majority and the minority respectively. So what happens to that ruling of the 4th March, Mr. Speaker? We need your guidance. I thank you.
Very well. That's a valid concern, Honorable Amalwa. Remember, the promoters are at liberty. What has been communicated to the Speaker is the desire of the promoters. It will really be unfair for the Speaker to come and charge them, the promoters, since they have indicated their preference. And they can actually nominate, they could even nominate you, Honorable Amalwa. If they nominated you, we will still have, no option but to Honorable, because how can you say they cannot nominate the Honorable Amalwa? So if they nominated the Honorable Amalwa, again, I would have no issue, just to accede to their desires. My earlier communication was on the basis that there was no indication as to how it was going to be moved. And I came in as an agent of necessity to give a preference of what I felt at the time should be the right way. And that's why I indicated that the chair of Justice and Legal Affairs Committee was to move. But the promoters, having written and clearly indicated their preference, I should accede or defer to their desire and wish. Honorable Murugara. Honorable Gitonga Murugara. You know? Let me.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my point of order is on the report that was tabled this morning. And we have received an extract of 170 pages this morning. I have been approached by several members, and I speak as an insider, that I actually sat through the sittings of the Joint Committee when we wrote this report. It is a report that is intensive in the content. Most of the members have not had the opportunity to read the 170 pages, so that when the time comes for us to debate the bill, we require to do justice because of the monumental value of that bill to the citizens of Kenya. Therefore, if you look at what was tabled this morning, to be fair, it is bigger than our holy book, the Bible. It is in fact bigger than the Bible and the Quran combined. It is even bigger than the Bible, the Quran, and the Gita put together. Sincerely, we cannot debate and do justice to this bill unless we are given time to read the report, to internalize it, and ensure that we have quality debate to the bill. Therefore, understanding order number one, Honorable Speaker, I beseech you to exercise your discretion and give us, the members and everyone, not less than 7 days to read this report and then debate the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now, honor members, please, honor members, let us just treat each other with decorum and also with some element of seriousness. The Honorable Gitonga Murugara, the member for Tharaka, said that he speaks as an insider, a member who sat throughout all the meetings of the two committees sitting together, but he still has not read and understood what he even approved. So he was now to be the one interceding on behalf of all the others. So what then Honorable Gitonga Murugara actually then is saying that he should not even be a member of the committee. Because members of the committee should, if you are the ones to stand here and say that you have not read. No. Let's have other members. Honorable Ndidi Nyoro.
Thank you.
You know, if you make the wrong, you must weigh your wants as you make your interventions.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I rise on a slightly different move, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are in a bicameral parliament in Kenya, Mr. Speaker. That is the National Assembly and the Senate. And Mr. Speaker, from where I sit, an affront to one of us is an affront to all of us, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am referencing on something that happened this afternoon, Mr. Speaker, in the precincts of Parliament, where one of our own, the Senator for Meru, Senator Mithika Linturi, was kidnapped by the DCI police, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have seen an alarming rate of intimidation. We have seen an alarming rate of intimidation, Mr. Speaker, by the executive
meted to members of parliament, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I seek your direction.
Now, honor members,
Speaker.
honor members, honor members, honor members, honor members. Let him say what he has to say. I am sure, maybe more than any of you, I have the answer.
Mr. Speaker,
So
we
let
have
him
seen
say what he has to say.
We have seen an alarming rate of intimidation, Mr. Speaker, meted on members of parliament and especially by the executive. And Mr. Speaker, I was just trying to say that this afternoon, one of us, the Senator for Meru, Medeka Rinturi, was actually kidnapped by some people who are suspected. This parliament are intimidated on how to debate this report, Mr. Speaker.
Very well, Honorable.
Mr. Speaker, I seek your indulgence that we suspend this sitting, Mr. Speaker, until we know the welfare Senator Medeka Rinturi, Mr. Speaker, whom actually we don't even know whether he's alive, Mr. Speaker, after he was kidnapped by the DCI officers at the precinct of this parliament. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I submit.
Honor members, honor members. No, don't get agitated, honor members. You know, if I allow all of you now to react to this, I'm sure we no, just a minute. Don't raise up your hands now, please. The matter which the Honorable Didi Nyoro has raised had already been raised with me earlier, and I'm sure, as you know, no house commands the other on how to transact its business. And the Honorable Senator Medeka Rinturi has since returned to the other house. He is safe. That other house will deal with that matter as appropriate. They have sufficient rules and regulations that govern the protection of members as appropriate, especially when members are coming to perform parliamentary duties within the precincts of Parliament. So that matter is in very safe hands, Honorable Didi Nyoro. The Honorable Medeka Rinturi is safe, and there is no cause for us to suspend, to go and demonstrate on the streets, because we are lawmakers. We don't want to do that. Let's deal with the issues. Those responsible will have to go and answer before the appropriate Senate committee dealing with issues of privileges of members. So I think let's not get excited about this. It is okay. The matter is okay. The member is safe in the precincts of Parliament. So let's now do business on our members. Yes, let's do business now on our members. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill of number 2020 be now read a second time. And at the outset, I want to thank the promoters of the Building Bridges initiative for this singular honor to me to move this bill. And I'm cognizant of the fact that the promoters are represented in this House by the Honorable Junet, who is one of the promoters. But he actually did sign the letter to assign that responsibility to myself and the leader of minority to move on their behalf. Honorable Speaker, I wish to remind the House by way of background, that following the chaos that manifested after the 2017 presidential elections, we then had a peace deal which has been globally recognized as the March 2018 handshake between His Excellency President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and Right Honorable Raila Odinga, who one as a president and the other as the leader of the opposition coalition, and also known as the People's President, and who was sworn in by Honorable Kajwang as a People's CJ, which created Thank you, Honorable CJ, which created a movement that crystallized the constitutional imperative to seek peace, security, and unity. To seek peace, security, and unity. And that's something that we must constantly put at the back of our mind, that what we are doing is we are seeking peace, security, and unity. Now, the two leaders shook hands to create a truly bipartisan opportunity to unite this country. Unity that has eluded this country from independence, and set in motion the process that will also identify some comprehensive and far-reaching changes that would strengthen the rule of law, unite Kenyans, deepen our constitutionalism, and launch a comprehensive process to consolidate this momentous opportunity. So the handshake was not an end in itself, but rather the beginning of a bigger process that will go beyond 2022, that may go beyond 2027, that may go beyond into the future. Mr. Speaker, to concretize this initiative, a Building Bridges Advisory Presidential Task Force was appointed by the President in May of 2018, and they submitted their report after consultations with Kenyans 1 year later on the 26th of November 2019. This was unveiled and was then taken back to the people for validation. But most importantly is that so we remind ourselves where we started. During the handshake, the two leaders agreed on a 9-point agenda, which they believed if the 9 points are addressed, they will sort out the long-term issues of this country. And one of those issues was the lack of national ethos. What makes us Kenyan? Why are we shouting at one another? Why do people keep fighting? Can't people have some way they can talk to each other rather than at each other? Because we believe as Kenyans, there's something that binds us as Kenyans. So you say, I'm a Kenyan because I do the following. Our responsibility and rights. What are your responsibilities as a citizen? Members may recall that in the runner-up to the 2010 Constitution and within the Constitution itself, the agitation for rights was we need water in sufficient quantities. We need housing. Citizens must be given this. But if you look at the 2010 Constitution, apart from the obligation that citizens have a right to defend their constitution, there's very little in terms of what are the rights and responsibilities of citizens towards their country. The other item on the 9 points was the ethnic antagonism and competition. We fight based on our ethnic grounds, and that competition that comes at every election, 2 years before the election, 2 years after the election, we're hitting the woods, 2 years before the election, we are fighting, and that costs our economy in the billions. elections have been seen to be divisive, and we've seen that in 1992, we've seen that in 1997. There was a lapse in 2003 when we didn't have any division, but we saw that again in 2005 when we have a very divisive referendum. Then 2007 was the climax, and in 2013 there was a lull, perhaps because of the cloud, the ICC cloud, and then in 2017 the divisions came again. The issue of inclusivity, and I had a taste of that even this afternoon, and it's something that we need to figure out. How do we ensure that the youth, the women, all the 47 groups that constitute Kenya can be included within the governance structures of their country so everyone feels included? Shared prosperity. How do we ensure that we don't have these feelings that some people are getting more than the others in terms of resources, or others are producing less than the others, yet our national GDP, when we now talk of we have a national GDP, our national prosperity, how do we ensure that every Kenyan can feel that they have a fair share of the national cake? But most importantly, looking back at what we said about responsibilities and rights, how do we also ensure that every Kenyan can feel I should also take my fair share in the baking of the national cake? The other item that was to be addressed through this BBI was the bigger issue of corruption. I mean, everyone believes that we waste a lot of resources on corruption. And whether you're talking of who is taking a bribe or who is wasting resources, and you can take this to the bank. It doesn't matter whether it's KEMSA, whether it's everywhere, but generally, the sheer fact that we have an ethics and anti-corruption commission in our constitution is a sure admission that corruption is so much into our system that we actually need a constitutional commission to try to remove it. In countries where they have sorted out anti-corruption issues, you don't even have a corruption police force because they have sorted out by sorting it out as part of its national ethos, that we hate corruption because it's bad, it deprives people of services. The other issue is devolution, which was one of the 9 points. 2010, we say let's move from decentralization of services to actual devolution of services. And the decentralization, you're basically moving government down. You may recall the issue hitherto of the district focus for rural development, where government services were being taken to the districts. But there was no power at the district level to make decisions. In fact, the first model of devolution was the setting up of CDF, where money was devolved to the constituencies, and there was decision-making at the constituency level in terms of what do we do with that money. And that seemed to have persuaded people, even at the 2010, that perhaps we should move most of these funds, and the functions, which used to be under the old CAP 265, the Local Governments Act, which had listed the things to be done by local authorities. And they were scheduled and said, let's not just give to our local governments, let's even shift the focus of this local government. They're not just local government, these are county government. Change their names, even the whole nomenclature, give them functions, give them power, and even let them elect their own representative rather than those being appointees or the Minister for Local Government. But that devolution, 10 years down the line or 8 years down the line, it's time to look at it and say, has it worked? And I'll be coming back to that later. And then, obviously, the other issue was that safety and security. Because you can't have peace unless you can guarantee safety and security. Honorable Speaker, in January of 2020, His Excellency the President then appointed a steering committee on the implementation of the recommendation of the BBI to a United Kenya Task Force through Gazette Notice number 264, volume CXXI, Roman, number 7, with the following terms of reference. And one of them was to conduct the validation of the task force report on building bridges to a United Kenya through consultations with citizens, civil society, faith-based organizations, cultural leaders, the private sector, and experts, and then to propose administrative, policy, statutory, or constitutional changes that may be necessary for the implementation and recommendations contained in the task force report, and consider any relevant contributions made during the validation report. And the output of that process was this report, which I had the honor of tabling in this House on the 28th of October. On the 3rd of November, that's when I tabled it, and I hope members have also had the opportunity to look through it, which contains not just the bill, but also saying what administrative measures need to be taken, what policy measures need to be taken, what legislative measures need to be taken to achieve the issues under the 9 agenda items. In October of 2020, and that's when this report was done, and again, within it, it contained the constitutional issues that need to be addressed. And these were contained in a draft bill that was then processed through the provisions of Article 257, which basically outline what you need to do if you want to convince Kenyans to support your amendment to the Constitution without having to go through the parliamentary route. And on the 26th of January, the BBI Initiative Steering Committee delivered a draft bill to amend the Constitution by popular initiative, supported by not less than 1 million signatures. In fact, there were 4 million, then out of which 3 point something were validated. And it was more than the mandatory 1 million. So they passed that test, they gave it to the IEBC. And then IEBC, that's the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, pursuant to Section 4 of Article 257, submitted a draft bill to each of the 47 county assemblies for consideration after verification of the signatures in support of the initiative. Mr. Speaker, Article 257, subsection 7 of the Constitution provides that if a draft bill has been approved by a majority of county assemblies, it shall be introduced in Parliament without delay. And it's something that we need to have at the back of our mind, that whereas in the county assemblies, it was very clear that they need to consider within 90 days. In the House, there is no time limit as to what we need to consider, except the operating word, that it shall be introduced in Parliament without delay, which now brings in the whole issue of the urgency. And that's why we are even having this special sitting today, because we have no reason to delay the consideration, the committee having finished its report last Friday. Now, having satisfied the threshold for introduction by the popular in Parliament and agenda requirement, the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill was read for the first time in both houses on the 4th of March 2020. Members, it was introduced without delay from the county assemblies, but you now remember we are almost 2 months since it came to this House, and it's important we just remind ourselves that the clock is ticking and people are looking at, is this House processing it without delay? Honorable Speaker, in your communication dated the 4th of March on the draft bill, you informed the House that upon reading of the bill would be referred to the Departmental Committee on Justice and to undertake public participation on the bill, and it will be brought back to the two houses. As Mr. Speaker, you're also aware, and you've mentioned this and we debated this before, that currently we actually don't have the legal framework or legislative framework within our statute law or even within our standing orders for the processing of an amendment to the Constitution by way of popular initiative. And indeed, this has presented a legal minefield that the House has had to cautiously navigate. And indeed, the receipt of a letter today and has now made your life far much easier because you'd have had to decide who moves a bill that is promoted by people who are strangers to this House. But at least now we have precedent that even in future, the promoters will be requested to nominate who moves on their behalf. Indeed, at the very onset, you recognize these challenges, and in your earlier mentioned communication dated 4th of March this year, some of these challenges were referenced that included at the first instance the issue of publication of the bill, the procedural gap with regards to moving a second bill, which we have now resolved, and indeed what happens on all the various sittings. Honorable Speaker, allow me to reiterate the words of General Colin Powell, a former U.S. Secretary of State, a former general and also a former Secretary of State, in his famous quote that great leaders, and I quote, great leaders are almost always great simplifiers who can cut through argument, debate, and doubt to offer a solution everybody can understand. Mr. Speaker, indeed, allow me to congratulate you for exhibiting these great traits as quoted above and providing guidance at that to us that has assisted the House in discharging its constitutional mandate, especially within the lacunas that we find ourselves in. I also want to, at this point, also thank the two co-chairs, our chair of the Justice Legal Affairs Committee, the Honorable Muturi Kigano, and his co-chair in the Senate, the Honorable Omogeni. We gave them the responsibility to safeguard the integrity of the process, and they took time to build consensus through giving due regard to every member to air their views and to avoid the pitfalls and vagaries of joint sittings, which we have seen in the past, even in simple mediations. At least we avoided the potential conflicts that would have subjected a very good report to rejection due to questions of credibility. I am aware that the process has taken rather long, but at the end, they have come to a conclusion that as a committee, they support the bill. Never mind, there are small nuances in terms of divisions on some of the paragraphs, which I don't want to get into because the chairman will be presenting those. But the bottom line is we are all happy that after the time they took and having listened to one another, having listened to the experts, they all agreed that it is important to recommend to the House that we support the bill. And I've read the report. Now, turning to the bill. In brief, the objective of this bill is to amend the Constitution of Kenya to address issues arising from its implementation, and specifically to resolve issues of divisive elections, promote gender equity in governance, that's the issue of inclusivity, strengthen the structure of devolution, and increase resource allocation to the counties by strengthening the amount available for devolution. Honorable Speaker, the other issue is to broaden the mechanisms for all people of Kenya to benefit from economic growth, to harmonize certain roles and functions of the bicameral legislature, to fortify national ethos by specifying the responsibilities of citizens, and to strengthen the accountability of public resources and the fight against corruption. Mr. Speaker, the proposed constitutional reform originates from the views of citizens expressed through the Building Bridges initiatives. And through the BBI, citizens from all corners of the country share their concerns and views on issues ranging from responsibilities and rights, national ethos, and indeed all the 9 agenda items. Now, this bill, which comprises 74 clauses, addresses each of these issues, and those that are not addressed within the bill are addressed within the 12 pieces of legislation that are proposed, the several policy measures that are proposed, and the several administrative measures that are proposed. And the totality of that will then sort out these problems into the long term. If I then go to specifically the matters within the bill, I've chosen to focus on 5 key issues, which in my opinion were the main focus of the proponents of the BBI, in line with the aspirations of the over 3 million Kenyans who appended their signatures in support of the BBI and subsequently affirmed which was approved by another 43 county assemblies and 1 abstention and 3 negatives. Further, the public participated heavily when our committee did call for public participation, and the chair of the committee will be giving us that issue. I want to concentrate on 5 key issues. And one is the need to resolve issues of divisive elections that includes the harmonization of certain roles and functions of the bicameral parliament, the promotion of gender equity in governance, strengthening of the structure of devolution, and strengthening of accountability of public resources, and our future, the youth. Mr. Speaker, as a matter of national, regional, and international notoriety, that Kenya has experienced electoral violence during the general elections held in the years 1992, 1997, 2007, and 2017. The violence that followed the elections of 2007, much of which was related to ethnic tensions, was serious enough that it actually led to international mediation and accommodation through a coalition government, which ultimately built crucial support for the adoption of a new constitution, which was approved in a referendum in 2010. A similar effort has been failed in 2005, mainly due to mistrust. Now, that constitution of 2010 established a presidential republic in which sovereignty is exercised by the people through directly or through their democratically elected representatives. The 2010 constitution also made a number of key changes. It created a decentralized system. It also limited presidential powers, that every appointment needed to come to the House to be approved. Hitherto, there was not such thing. It also established this devolution in the 47 counties, which replaced the 46 districts for the capital, and a greater level of oversight over branches and levels of government through independent commissions and a more robust chapter on the Bill of Rights. This constitution also highlighted the sovereign power of the people within Article 1, which was not hitherto as highlighted. And more importantly, also gave the people, after like 20 years of agitating to change their constitution, and you know, all the Saba movements, all the tear gas in the streets, until people went to Bomas through after Ufungamano and all those issues. For those who were active politically before 2000, you will know the struggle the Kenyans went through in an effort to change their constitution. So the 2010 constitution said Kenyans will never again have to fight on the streets to change their constitution. All they need is use a legal route, which was then prescribed within Article 257, also known as the popular initiative, that if Parliament or the government of the day are not willing to change the constitution for the benefit of the people, you now have a route in Article 257 through which you can actually change the constitution. And this bill is the first to come out to this House through that initiative. So it's thanks to the efforts of the Constitution of 2010 that we now have, that the people of Kenya can now come through this House and ultimately to the other Kenyans and persuade them to change the Constitution, whether we as a House support it or not, whether the government supports it or not. But the people want a certain change. The Constitution says they will get it. Mr. Speaker, I didn't mention that following the 2017 general elections, much as Kenyans had hoped that the 2010 Constitution was going to solidify the unity and lead to peace and stability into, ever after. The elections of 2017 brought out that perhaps there were still some simmering issues that unless they addressed, we will never reach our nirvana that we hoped our 2010 Constitution would take us through, because tensions were still there. And it is taking this in mind that His Excellency the President, Uhuru Kenyatta, who had committed himself and his Jubilee Party to healing and unifying Kenya, he began reaching out to the leaders across the political divide, including the opposition, in a lengthy and tedious exercise which culminated in the famous handshake. And we must remember that apart from being a Jubilee Party political pledge to unite Kenyans, it's also one of his obligations under Article 131(2) that requires the President to promote and enhance the unity of Kenya. So part of the pursuit of the handshake is in pursuit of a constitutional obligation by the President to unite and to promote and enhance the unity of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, this bill is proposing to replace this pure presidential system that we adopted, copying a bit from America, perhaps without realizing we are talking of a federal system in America. A federal system where resources are resident in the states, and only about 30% of the GDP is actually controlled within the federal government system. But 70% of the resources and service delivery is within the states. We have the opposite, where 85% of the resources are in the national government and 15% in the county government, and we actually thought we could replicate an American system and bring it here and try to do it. So what it's proposing is that let's go back to what we've always known, the Commonwealth system of government, albeit with some modification. Because we don't have a monarchy, we have a president, something we started with in 1964 when Kenya became a republic. Mr. Speaker, it's always amused me that we all talk we are using an American system of government, when our own speaker is the president for the Africa Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. So we do agree that we are Commonwealth parliamentary system, but our NGOs and people who agitated had convinced us we need to go through a non-Commonwealth system. So the proponents are then basically saying that the promoters, let's go back to having government intertwined within the legislature, like we've always had, so that we have a hybrid where, much as we've been talking, or we have total separation between the executive and legislature, it makes our positions here very difficult when 206 members of the 349 belong to the Jubilee coalition under the president, who is also head of the executive. Now, when do they wear the party hat and say, we are in parliament, we are going to kind of, as part of our oversight role, we are going to reject what the president, without being seen as if they are disobeying. Yeah? So we have some unique situations here that the pure presidential system cannot address. Mr. Speaker, we also know we've had problems even when members question here. The accountability has been so limited because the cabinet secretaries would appear in committee room number 4 or somewhere in Protection House or Continental to answer a question by one member. But that question might be of interest to the entire House. When questions are answered on the floor of this House, the accountability is to the entire House, and people can then follow up rather than small pieces. So the members did then say, let's have the executive back in the House, and the position, when you have that kind of situation, the ministers are in the House, then obviously you need somebody to coordinate them who cannot be the leader of majority. Because the ministers would, what used to be in the old days, the leader of government business, then is what is now being brought in as the prime minister, who will be the coordinator of the ministers in the House, assisted by two deputies. So I've heard people saying that there's creation of vacancies or many positions for political reasons. But immediately you introduce ministers in the House, of necessity, you will need somebody to coordinate them. And that person can be the first among them, who is the prime minister, yeah? Or the premier minister, which is the first minister, if you like, assisted by two deputies. And then the current situation where you have chief administrative secretaries who are supposed to be the interlink between parliament and the executive will now be taken over by assistant ministers or deputy ministers appointed from amongst the members of parliament, so that business can be conducted here and we can really have members sitting to the right of the speaker representing the government side and members to the left representing the opposition, led by the leader of official opposition and the shadow cabinet. And that system has worked before. We know it can work, and it will continue working. Mr. Speaker, as regards the second issue of the 2/3 gender rule, we know in 2010, we agreed that Kenyans said that we should have a system of governance that ensures that 2/3, no more than 2/3 of one gender must be represented in elective or even appointee positions. And that was contained within Article 27(8), which says the state shall take legislative and other measures to implement this principle to ensure that no more than 2/3 of the members of elective bodies shall be of the same gender. Now, it's been tried like 6 times in this House, and every attempt has flopped, including us being threatened with a dissolution of the House because people went to the Chief Justice to say we have failed and hence we should be dissolved. And the President, in his wisdom, knew that there was an initiative that was also coming and hence could well be used to solve this problem, so he doesn't have to dissolve Parliament, because let the people of Kenya decide on how they want to handle this issue. Because it's the people of Kenya through a referendum in 2010 who put this challenge onto Parliament. So we're fortunate as Parliament that the promoters of BBI have taken this challenge from us, and we'll be taking it to the people to say, in 2010, you brought in the 2/3 gender rule. Can you now make a decision as to how we constitute Parliament without forcing you to nominate, to elect and so, because Article 38 is very clear that you cannot, people have a choice of who to vote for or where to buy. Because of those issues, BBI is solving our problem, and we're happy and we hope that the people of Kenya will then make a decision on that as they did in 2010. Mr. Speaker, one of the other innovative things that happened in terms of the amendments to Article 97 is that much as we are thinking that in the event that members are not, that the public does not elect members in the proportions envisaged, the 2/3, even after political parties will be forced to provide lists that are gender compliant, if I use the word, the top-up will also not just be by people picking people who have not participated in an electoral system, because the whole point of the top-up is to help people to participate in election. So it will be tied to people who've actually participated in the election. As regards the strengthening of the structure of devolution. Mr. Speaker, I wish I could if I could be allowed to make do with a mask, having been vaccinated. Thank you. And nobody is standing before me. As regards the strengthening of the structure of devolution, an increase in the resources, the bill proposes to increase the minimum allocation of national revenue from the mandatory 15% to 35%. Now, it's important to note that even as we were discussing the Division of Revenue Bill this afternoon, if you did a quick calculation, you'll find that we are not actually at 15%, and it's moved from between 26% to about 30%. But this is because of the goodwill of the current president. Now, we don't know what a future president, whether he will have the same goodwill or would actually say, the Constitution says 15%, here is your 15%. If it's not enough, do what you have to do at the counties. So to guarantee devolution and ensure the guarantee that devolution works and sort out all the service delivery at local level, this is proposal is let us make sure that we devolve not less than 35%, which is estimated that that's the money you need to ensure health care, to ensure better roads, to ensure that water is provided to people in sufficient quantities, all the things that are within the 14 services that are scheduled to be delivered by the county government. Mr. Speaker, the bill in clause 50 also proposes to amend Article 203 on equitable share and other financial laws to expand the criteria for determining the equitable share to include the need to eradicate corrupt practices and wastage of public resources, the need to ensure the attainment of the economic and social rights guaranteed under Article 43, so that money is not just going to the counties, but it must be tied to the extent to which they are actually attaining the economic rights, and also a certain compression to ensure that the average amount of money allocated per person in a county with the highest allocation does not exceed more than 3 times the one with the lowest. Honorable Speaker, we said one of the biggest issues has been competition for resources. And if people cannot get resources fairly through a distributive system, through a formula, people will then want to fight for the top position so that if they get to State House, they can guarantee resources for their people. Immediately you show fair distribution of money across all the counties and also give people more money by giving 35%, and services are delivered at that local level, the competition for positions at the top will diminish because everyone is getting what they need. That's why you don't find the cutthroat competition in UK, you don't find the cutthroat competition in Europe, you don't find that cutthroat competition in the US, but because the state provides all the resources fairly across the entire country. But here, we believe unless one of your own is at the top, you will not be guaranteed resources because there's no fair distributive system that is within the law. And what this is going to do is by increasing the amount of money to 35%, so you're reducing the power at the center and the people having to kowtow to a power that be to get services because they have them there. Let people decide on their governor. 2, you're also devolving this money equitably. And when you now come also to the amendment that are also proposed within Article 89 and the others in terms of the fair distribution of seats, the voice is also adequately distributed. So what would people be fighting for to actually get to the center to guarantee themselves a piece of the pie when it's already guaranteed by the law? And these are some of the things that BBI, we may not see it that way. But when you now look at the bigger picture, you will see that just by those 3 provisions, it will mean that people, their appetite for fighting at the top will drastically reduce. And we will get to a point where we will now be looking for a leader going to the top, being who will safeguard Kenya within our international obligations, rather than who will bring water to the 47 counties. Not who will do more edification in the country, but who will ensure that Kenyan goods can operate within the Africa Trade framework, or open up markets in China and all those things. That's the kind of president we'll be looking for in the future once you sort out some of these issues where we are seen, the president is seen as a provider of basic goods that should be provided by law and through the devolved system. Mr. Speaker, these amendments obviously mean that we will sort out the issues of underdevelopment, economic empowerment across the different counties, and it's part of that sharing of the national prosperity. Mr. Speaker, I also note that some provisions have been brought within Article 11A of the bill that seeks to anchor within the Constitution the aspiration of a new economic model based on value creation and that provides equitable opportunities for all the people. It promotes industrialization. It mainstreams the issue of pastoralism, rather than just talking about agriculture. It also brings in the issue of the green economy, of the blue economy, which again is something that was not foreseen in 2010. And all these things, by bringing to the front in the Constitution, mean that they can now be mainstreamed in all the policy papers. More importantly for us, Mr. Speaker, I did mention earlier that we, in 2003, the Constituency Development Fund was introduced, which has shown that with limited resources, properly focused, it can yield a lot of development. But this has always had challenges, especially with the 2010 Constitution, in terms of its constitutionality. And I know our Speaker has been working hard in terms of some of the laws that were declared, and he will report at the appropriate time. But within the Constitution now, what the promoters have done is they've said, let CDF be an integral part of the Constitution. And at the constituency level and also at the ward level, we have a similar fund. So that a governor who feels that there is a member of the county assembly who is constantly challenging him on governance and then decide to punish that MCA with no development, we will now find they can't do it because as of right, there's an amount dedicated to every ward, which means that you can now agitate at the county assembly for proper governance of the resources being taken there without risking development in your ward. And these are part of the things that we are talking of that will help eradicate poverty while also strengthening governance. Mr. Speaker, Clause 12 of the bill also proposes some amendments to Article 96 of the bill. And you know, Article 96 basically has been giving powers to the Senate, very limited powers in terms of oversight of a national revenue distributed to the counties. What the promoters have done is they have said the Senate should not just be oversighting national revenue, but they should also be oversighting the expenditure and also oversighting the revenue collected by the counties. So now, at least Senate has a role. Now, if you also add up to the proposed amendments to Article 179, Mr. Speaker, where it said before that, I think it's 179.4, where it said before that the governor and the deputy governor are the CEO and deputy CEO of the county. And it stopped there. But what the promoters are doing is now extending that and say that they are not just the CEO and deputy CEO, but shall be accountable to the county assembly. So that now it's very clear in the Constitution that the governor and his deputy or her deputy shall be answerable to the county assembly, which was not there in the old Constitution, and they chose conveniently when to be accountable to the Senate or when to be accountable to the county assembly, depending on the severity of the matter. So this is something that is very important for fighting corruption and enhancing governance, because we are giving more money to the counties. Let them also be more accountable to the county assemblies and to the Senate. As I get towards the close, Honorable Speaker, we also have seen there's also lots of other changes in terms of elevating the Director of Public Prosecution, strengthening the office in terms of it's proposed to be an independent office, so that the DPP will not be at the beck and call of the executive or somebody to say, arrest this one or release this one because they are compliant. It will operate as an independent office, and even the qualification of the office have been enhanced so that we actually get a Directorate of Public Prosecution that will be of help to Kenyans. And this goes alongside also the elevation of the Director of Criminal Investigations. When you now look at the changes within the police bit, the Director of Criminal Investigation will be at par with the other deputies, the Deputy for Inspector Generals of Police, Administration, and also now crime, so that he actually feels, or she will feel facilitated to pursue crime without having to go to the Director General for Police to look for police officers to send for arrest missions. At par with the rest, he'll be able to command his force. And this is a notice for all those who are corrupt that your days are numbered. And there are also provisions within the law and within the Constitution to also bring in the timelines for the resolution of these corruption cases, so that we don't have a case like Goldenberg, which started in 1992 and is still in court. There are other cases that started in 2003 are still in court. There has to be a timeline when these things must be finalized. Finally, Mr. Speaker, regards the issue of youth. Youth is our future, and they have not been addressed adequately. 75% of our population is falling within this bracket. And if we don't internalize, if we don't include them within the economy, then it's a powder keg waiting to explode. And what the promoters are doing is establishing a youth commission, which will advance the participation of youth in all spheres of public and private life. And Mr. Speaker, it also, when you look at all the other bills that will also be coming in as associated with the BBI, in terms of the strengthening of the micro-enterprise, in terms of the taxation holidays on new startups for the youth, in terms of all those other bits and pieces that will need to be to accompany this, you can see that the youth have actually been mainstreamed into this. Mr. Speaker, one of the founders of the most revered presidents of the U.S., Franklin D. Roosevelt, once said that you can't always build the future for our youth, but we can build our youth for the future. And the proposed amendments are aimed at establishing this youth commission, providing a platform for the youth engagement and participation, which will, without doubt, positively contribute towards empowering and building this youth for the future, not as building a future for our youth. And you can see that just the other day, His Excellency was in Karatina, was in Kimathi University, launching a company that is doing microchips for Japan in Kenya. In Manyani, there is the youth doing all manner of digital things for the world. So our future is empowered, and all we need is to mainstream some of those things and guarantee them into the Constitution. As I conclude, Mr. Speaker, allow me also to reiterate the words of one of the biggest civil rights movement activists, MLK, or Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., who said, and I quote, that one of the great liabilities of history is that all too many people fail to remain awake through great periods of social change. Every society has its protectors of status quo, its fraternities of the indifferent, and its fraternities of the indifferent who are notorious for sleeping through revolutions. Today, our very survival depends on our ability to stay awake, to adjust to new ideas, to remain vigilant, and to face the challenge of change. End of quotes. In this regard, I wish to ask members that we're being called upon to join this revolution to change Kenya to a better place, so that our future children, our current children and our future and their children can have a place that they will say there were people before us who, following in what happened in 2010, took a constitutional moment, which the president has been talking about, and have made our constitution much better and have guaranteed us a future that will then ensure that we will be better off than our parents. In this regard, Honorable Speaker, I wish to urge members to take cognizance of our political and constitutional challenges that we face as a country that have threatened our national unity in the past, and which this Constitutional Amendment of Kenya Amendment Bill of 2020, popularly known as the BBI, seeks to address. Let the legislature not remain captive to the status quo due to fear of the unknown, and let us remain steadfast to the wishes of the Kenyan public as enumerated in the proposals in the bill. And, honorable members, like I said, every election cycle, it is estimated we lose minimum of 1 year before, 1 year after. If you look at the GDP we lose, it's estimated by World Bank in 2007, it was estimated that the clashes cost our GDP 430 billion. And we saw the growth rate move from 7 to 0%. So if you look at every election, we are losing 430 billion, then it's a small price to pay to even spend another 10, 20 billion to guarantee that in future we will not lose all those billions or even lose any life because of things that we can resolve by fixing the proposals which the promoters of BBI have put before us as they go to the Kenyan people. And I wish to request that members do support this bill, and not just the bill, but even go and be the champions to go and talk to the people as the people who have the knowledge, as their representatives, and say, much as you did not come through us in Parliament, we support you and will support you through the referendum. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the Honorable and ask the Honorable Leader of Minority Party, Honorable John Badi, to second.
Honorable John Badi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, indeed, this is a historical moment.
Je, umeomoka? Kama hujaomoka kwenye Quickly ndio mambo yote. Hapa tuko na fridge, kodi yake ni CM. Tuko na gas cooker, kodi yake ni CK. Tuko na TV, kodi yake ni TV. Tuko na simu aina ya Samsung ni SM, ama Oppo ni Oppo. My friend, mahali popote unanitizama, eka hizo kodi zake kisha utume kwa 4032353. 4032353. Alafu utakuwa unaomoka na hizi bidhaa. Kumbuka, kwenye Quickly ni bila bora zaidi kwa bei ya chini kwa chini. Banki imeconfirm, pesa zimeingia. Congratulations son, gari ni lako sasa. Shukran. Hey boss, simeche insurance yako nitumie kabla nijipange. Insurance ya gari haiwezi kuwa transferred kwa mtu mwingine. Sina habari, na nikuulize, hii comprehensive insurance inakava vitu gani? Comprehensive motor insurance inakava gari linapoharibika wakati wa ajali, pamoja na uharibifu wa mali ya mtu mwingine, gari likiibiwa au likichomeka. Pia inakava passenger wa gari lako na passenger wa lile gari lingine kunapotokea ajali. Kwani umenisahau mimi kama driver? Dereva hakui covered na comprehensive insurance, ila anajitafutia